We're good?
Yep.
Thank you, James.
Yep. Can you move your chair up just a little bit? Thank you.
Okay. Welcome to the Peak News. I'm Chaim Goldman, the Watchman. You're listening to AM 1460 and FM 101.1, The Answer. Welcome to the end of our broadcast week. We thankfully just do this 4 days a week. It's a lot of work, but we get to Media and Education Day on Thursdays, which is what I love, because that's what we do, isn't it? We're trying to educate you through media and bring something different to the Pikes Peak community, citizen journalism. And so today we're actually going to focus in on that. It's hard for me to get guests that are both media and education at the same time. We combined this on Mondays. We do business and culture, government and politics on Tuesdays. That's pretty much a fit. Faith and family on Wednesdays, and we put these other two segments over here. But when I'm able to get someone on the program who does both, it makes me very happy. And we have that, and I'll introduce you to him in a minute here on the Peak. But first I want to do a couple of things. First of all, I'll let you know that I believe we are live streaming on Facebook. I can't promise more than radio on video, but if you want to see what we look like and what we're doing down here, go to Facebook and the Peak News Media. We are there. Secondly, all of our sponsors, always do a shout out to them. They're the ones who bring this to you. They're all local businesses. We don't have some giant benefactors or big national sponsors. That's not who we are. We are local citizens reporting on local news and supported by local businesses. And I really believe that's the way it should be, especially since so much of our media has been taken over by corporate interests and special interests. We like people who are just interested in getting the news out because they live here and they want this, and they're providing this service to you. So please patronize them as you hear their commercial spots throughout the program, or find that on our website. But always a big shout out to Springs Dentist and Dr. Craig Summer, our platinum sponsor, Holistic Dentistry in Colorado Springs. They're good friends of ours, our family dentist. They, as you hear me say many times, because I really owe it to them, years ago before we launched, they said they knew I had this on my heart to launch this. They said, when you're ready, we're in. And so we are here after a year. They renewed their contract after a year. So that was really good when we hit our 1 year anniversary. And then I want to invite you to something really, really big, and I hope that you'll come out. We are doing an event, a fundraising event for our nonprofit. We started a nonprofit organization over the past year called the Peak News Educational Foundation in order to teach ethical journalism, media vocational training, have internships, and especially with youth, but with adults also, to train people to be citizen journalists. And we are having an event called Taste of the Peak at the Pinery a week from today, Thursday the 30th of January, 5 to 8 p.m. We have Jason Jorgensen, school board member of D11, Heidi Ganal, president of Rocky Mountain Voice and ran for governor back in 2022, Chris Gould, who's the GM here at Salem Media in Colorado Springs, Jeff Crank, our new congressman by video, and me emceeing, and some other surprises. And we're going to be having a fun time with food tastings, experiences, but talking about how do we bring journalism back into the region, and we'll be having some auctions and things like that to raise money for the foundation. So go to thepeak.news/events, get your tickets, only $20, and join us down there. And please tell others so we can pack the house at the Pinery next week. So, as we are here on Media and Education Day, we have as our guest, and I've been reaching out to him for quite a few months. I'm happy that he finally was able to make it down here. Corey Hutchins, who is Journalism Institute Manager at Colorado College here in the Springs. He publishes Inside the News in Colorado, a weekly Substack newsletter, which we actually use to pull headlines from about the media, because he's the one who finds out about it. So he's our main source to get the inside scene on the media. And we're going to be talking about the state of the media in Colorado today, and also how to get you, and especially youth, involved in journalism. Corey Hutchins, thanks so much for being on the Peak.
Well, thanks. Glad to talk about media and education anytime.
Yeah, and we've been having a great. We hardly got to planning the show a short time ago because we were just talking shop and everything, and it's great to
That
get.
was all off the record, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, you decide what comes on the record here now that we're on. But it's really great because when you talk with journalists, you know, in the end, we really are truth tellers. Yes, we have our own personal bents, but you have to leave that. You have to take that hat off, and you don't take it off completely because it is who you are. And so, doing real journalism, one of the things we were talking about, you know, should we even use that phrase anymore? Citizen journalist, does it turn people off? And you know, I'm more.
It wasn't the citizen part that I worried about. It was
The journalist part that people have lost faith. I believe in reestablishing things. You know, that's what I'm a conservative. I want to conserve. I don't want a new term. I want an old term renewed and brought back to what it used to mean, so that we can operate with that. And that's what we're trying to do here at the Peak. And so when we come back, we have Corey Hutchins. We have headlines. We're talking about Colorado media and more, and especially, as always, how we want you to be active. You're listening to The Peak on AM 1460. I'm Chaim Goldman, the Watchman. It's Media Day, and when we come back, headlines. Stick around. We'll be right back. Cool. Okay, we got 4 minutes. So as far as timing, and we're still on.
Sorry, I interrupted you a couple times.
No, that was great. No, we're here to banter. Really good radio, talk radio, is two people
disagreeing.
or having a good time.
Yeah.
But it's more like when you're in a coffee shop and there's an interesting conversation and you're sort of like listening in. That's talk radio. People are like getting educated, but it's interesting and they're being voyeuristic in a way, if I can use that term for radio. And so the banter is really what people on talk radio are into. So that's good stuff. As far as timing, if you ever see me do this, that means wrap it up, 10 or 15 seconds, finish up, get it back to me because I got to get to the next thing. When we get to the monologue, you'll have about 4 minutes, and I'll give you 3, 2, 1, and this means 30 seconds.
30 seconds.
Because wrap up,
3,
you're
2,
like,
1, go, and then you're going to do.
yeah, I'll count you down.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when 30 seconds means you have time to do an end cap and finish your statement. If you run out of time, which I don't expect you to do, and you come up early, I'll ask a follow-up, but try to take up the 4 minutes.
Sure.
There. If you see me hold up a finger or two, what do you need?
A clock. If you could just do when I'm at 1 minute, when I'm at 2 minutes, when I'm at 3 minutes, when I'm at 4, or...
You would rather me up? I usually down count.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I down count so that
That's
you
better.
can, yeah. Because then you'll start to see how you have to trim as you go. You'll start to see, it's better when it's shrinking. If I hold up a finger or two, I'm giving you a time budget for that answer. So don't think I'm telling you to stop talking. So if I hold up 1 or 2 minutes just to let you know approximately, pace your answer in that much time and then give it back to me. If you hear music, I'm 30 seconds from break, so you got to finish up and give it back to me so I can throw to the break. And then otherwise, this modality of just voice, that's all they got. So there's an intensity that you have to bring because you get shrunk. They don't have the body language, they don't have the facial expression. So there's sort of an over-the-top feeling, like the way I'm talking right now, and it's like, hi, I'm why? Why? Because when you hear it on the other, if you're normal chill,
Okay.
you sound sleepy. So bring it. Think radio theater. Think radio theater.
This is new to me, by the way.
Oh yeah, I know. That's why I coach people this every day.
Okay.
But this is how we do good radio. There's all emotion has to come through the voice. Everything is carried by the voice in this medium. So the long pauses, just and you'll see me. I'm moving, but I know I'm getting it into my voice.
Sure.
I'm having to make sure because it stays in here. So think about radio theater and how they communicate stuff with just sounds. Think about theater acting, that there's sort of this intensity of projection. It's not volume because we have the mic, but it's sort of an intensity, a passionate intensity. That's always good when you're speaking, but in radio, believe me, by the time it gets to their speaker, they're in traffic, the kids are screaming, that if you want to sound normal, you got to go a little over the top.
Okay.
Because it's every form of communication has its
when we get to the
its art. So
you're gonna do the headline about somebody who worked at CBI, right? It was a lab tech or somebody.
The Missy Woods one?
Yeah,
Yeah, we're gonna start with that.
You're probably way more, just so you know, familiar with the details and the facts of that than I am.
Okay.
But, um,
So I'll ask how does the media approach? I mean, I was gonna bring on Michael Allen and get a legal thing, but from you, I'm gonna get a media. How
Yeah,
does
okay.
media cover something like this? Okay, we're back in 10. Welcome back to the Peak News. I'm Chaim Goldman, the Watchman. You're joining us on Media and Education Thursday, and we're focused in on the media. We have our guest and co-host for the hour, Corey Hutchins, Journalism Institute Manager at Colorado College, teaching journalism down there, and also publisher of the Inside the News in Colorado Substack, and which I mentioned, I reference weekly when we do the headlines, because it's almost like our own daily variety. Corey's like who got hired, who got fired, what's going on, what's who's going out of business, who's getting grants. It's really good.
the tagline is the news behind the news in Colorado. Right. There are so many places where you can get the news, the headlines, what happened. I try to write about every week. What happened behind those? How did the reporter get that story? What are the ethics involved in this? Things like that.
And that's really important because, by the way, no one likes to be transparent, right? We all want transparency in other people, but this is why industries tend to not report on themselves, and this is why we get into trouble. So in this way, it's not the focus of it, but just by giving you a peek behind the scenes, just like we do here at the Peak, letting you get behind the scenes and even join us here. This is how we bring accountability in a way to our own industry, which is so important, because we've seen the abuse of media to the point where people trust media in this country less than they trust the government. And as the ones who are supposed to be watching over the government, that is a big problem for a free society. So thank you, Corey, for what you do. And we're going to get to the first headline here, and this is big. Excuse me. Excuse me. You may have been tracking with this, but the charges just came out. Missy Woods, former Colorado forensic scientist at center of DNA scandal, appears in court. Judge adjusts her bond. This is what happened. Basically, one of the number one forensic expert in the state, who is involved in so many criminal cases of DNA for decades. It started to come out sort of, not too long ago, that maybe she wasn't doing her job completely above board. And she was allowed to step down and sort of go away, but then it came back because they have over 102 count felony indictment came down on her. And we don't know. I mean, the courts will see whether or not that any of these things, that she claims nothing that she did, and she did it that way because she was so overworked and how many hours, and they started to cut corners. She claims that no one was wrongfully convicted because of something that she did. It had nothing to do with that. I guess we'll need to find that out. The problem with this is, if you know the legal system, I mean, if there's any doubt that someone's guilty, our system in America really needs to let them go. And this will cast doubt on thousands of cases in our state. Some people might be in jail and they shouldn't be. Some people might be in jail because they should be, but because of our legal system, they may have a right to get out if they can't prove this. So this is a big deal, not just for her personally, but for the fact that this may cause so many cases. They've already estimated that she cost the state like $11 million. This is going to be much bigger. We're talking, this is a huge, huge story, but it's somewhat been flying under the radar. Corey, what do you make of it? And as journalists, how do we approach something like this, in your opinion?
So when I saw that headline the other day, I was really shocked because I covered politics and policy in Colorado. I've lived here for 10 years, and I've been a reporter in other states. In South Carolina was where I started my career, and scandals happen all the time there. And I kind of feel like Colorado is a place where these kind of things don't really happen all that much. And so that was surprising, the broad impact that this will have. I think, didn't we already hear, did I read a story that there's already a case where somebody has kind of been able to say, hey, you better relook at what happened.
Yeah, because
of
it's
this
something.
evidence.
Yeah, because it's something that's active. I believe that they're looking at. But the thing is, I want to comment to that because the question is, do we not have scandals because people aren't doing things wrong, or because the news isn't
It's
reporting
a really
on
good
them?
question. Nearly 10 years ago, I did a year-long report for the Center for Public Integrity called the State Integrity Investigation. They hired a reporter in every state to look at their state government and assess it for its risk of corruption. And so I was assigned Colorado. I had done South Carolina in the past. South Carolina got an F. Colorado got, I think, a D+. And one of the questions that I had when I was talking to a lot of people about why it was that we don't really see a lot of the kind of political scandals and a lot of the corruption at the state level that other states have. I heard some things. Some people thought term limits helped. Some of it was, I remember that being the big thing. But another was a real big question. Is it that there really isn't corruption, or is it just not being uncovered by the press?
From my take and what I've seen, the stories aren't being told in this area, and that's why we as the Peak are
Well, I
trying
want
to
to
do
know
what we
what
do.
you know that the rest of the public doesn't know.
We'll talk. Well, we talk about the stuff we can't talk about on the air, but overall, this is why we want to get citizen journalists, because think about an army of citizens reporting on things. We can bring transparency and accountability and find out, are these things, and also dismiss the rumors, because there's a lot of rumors and a lot of back talking. So,
And more people asking questions, the better.
okay, next story was about this Colorado news mapping project that this is your project.
Yeah.
So tell us about it. What are we doing?
Sure. So I wrote a piece for The Conversation, which is a news outlet that allows kind of academics to write about their research with journalistic flair. That's their tagline. And across the country, researchers at universities are seeking to find out where people are getting their news and information in their local communities. So in Colorado, we were kind of a pioneer in this about a couple of years ago. 2022, we released the Colorado News Mapping Project, where we tried to get a baseline of how many news and information sources we could find in every county in the state. So we did that through synthesizing databases of just what's public, but also we went deeper than that. So my students at Colorado College interviewed people in the counties and asked them, where do you get your news and information? And we sought to find out, what is it beyond the local radio station, local TV station, or the newspaper? As you might know, newspapers are disappearing from cities and counties across the country and in Colorado. And what we're finding is people get their news and information from a lot of different places. Facebook groups are huge. People are obviously on social apps like TikTok, Instagram, places like that. One student in one of our state's least populous counties in San Juan identified somebody who goes door to door like a modern day town crier and tells people what's going on. I think if she knows that they don't have internet or something like that. So we're trying to reflect the reality of where people are getting their local news and information all across the state in every county.
And where can people get a hold of that?
If they go to colabnews.co, in the top right corner, you're going to find a box that says Find Your Local News, and you will see an interactive map. You can hover over the county. It'll tell you the population of the county, how many news sources we've identified, and there's a form to fill out if you know of one that's not on here. If there's one in your community that you don't see on our map, we want to know about
Okay,
it.
is the Peak on there?
The Peak is on there. Check it out.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks for putting us on the map, literally
You're efficient.
literally and figuratively. Okay, last story, something that you wanted to break.
Oh
Here.
boy, I want to
We
break
got-
this.
we got about a minute and a
I want to
half.
break this on my own tomorrow, my newsletter. But I'll tell you, I'm not sure if I'm going to write.
Oh,
it.
come
Here's-
on, come
I'm gonna
on.
do it.
You're on
I'm gonna
my
do it.
show
I'm
now.
going to do it for you. I just heard about this lawsuit. A lawsuit dropped yesterday. I haven't been able to read the whole thing, but it could be a big one. It looks to me like somebody on the Front Range has sued the owner of the operator of a hedge fund that owns a large newspaper with multiple sister papers in Colorado for essentially what looks to me like consumer fraud, basically saying that they are not able to operate the way they're supposed to as a journalistic organization because of the cuts that the hedge fund operator has initiated on this newspaper. And the argument from the lawsuit appears to me anyway that this person is saying that cuts from the owner have led to a deterioration in the standards and the practice that this newspaper should be doing and damaged this person.
Wow, so that's, this is what we talk about here, how much money can influence the editorial and why there needs to be a really strong firewall between those things. But it happens all the time.
And just to be clear, you mentioned editorial, but we're talking, I believe, about the news section here. So not commentary, but news reports.
Right. News reports. No, I know, and we're seeing that. It's not just what is told, it's what's not told, and what's ignored a lot of the time. Well, you're listening to The Peak on Media and Education Day. We have Corey Hutchins from Colorado College and the Inside News in Colorado Substack. When we come back, Corey is going to be talking about why Colorado is such an interesting place to cover the news. It absolutely is. You're listening to The Peak, and we'll be right back. Cool. Good segment. Okay. So you got 3.5 minutes if you want to like review your notes or anything or do that. And again, we'll give you a countdown. 3,
Sure,
2,
yeah,
1, 30
this one's
seconds.
it should take
About
me
4 minutes.
4 minutes of
4
just
minutes
me talking.
Of just you talking.
All right. And are you going to set it up again, or what are you?
Yeah, I mean, I welcome the people back and
Okay.
say stuff. That's why it's a 5.5 minute segment, but
Okay.
you have about 4. Yeah, there's a thing on radio that they call it setting the table because we have no graphics and people are getting in and out of people are consuming getting in and out of their cars. We never know if they're here for the whole hour. Like a podcast, when we put the podcast. So this is why we're always giving our call letters. It's why we're always saying who we're talking to. It's always because we don't know that people are dropping into the middle of a conversation. And if you've ever listened to an interview and you listen 5 minutes and you're like, who are these people? I have no idea. So
I
that's
always find out they're really good about that. If you're just tuning in, we're talking with.
right. That's why, because on TV we put up graphics,
Yeah.
but here it's all voice. So that's why it's constantly the call letters, constantly we're talking with, constantly the name, because of the way radio is consumed.
So remind me again. You're going to, for the monologue, you're going to count down. You're at 4 minutes. You're at 3 minutes. You're at 2.
2
You're
minutes
at 1. Or you're going to go
and
up.
30, and then this is 30. No, I'm going to go down.
You're going to go down.
I won't give you 4 because that's when you're launching.
You're going to
So
go.
you're going to get 3, 2, 1, and 30.
Got it.
Okay? And, yeah. So, I'm going to go, I made a coffee for myself. I'm going to go grab it. And, yeah, I still have 2 minutes. Okay. You good on water? You good?
Yeah. I'm good.
How's it sounded, Jim? Sorry there. 1 minute. So remember, high energy.
Okay. Look, I rolled up my sleeves.
Okay, excellent. Okay, we got that.
I quit cough
You did?
about almost a year ago.
Really? Not me. I don't sleep much. So.
And I don't feel much different.
No? Okay. Okay. Okay, 15. Welcome back to the Peak News. I'm Chaim Goldman, the Watchman. You're listening to AM 1460 and FM 101.1, The Answer. And no, we're not here to lie to you. We're here to say the quiet stuff out loud, bring you information in context so that you can lead your life free. And that's really, in my opinion, what journalists should do. That's what we should be doing to serve the community. But unfortunately, it doesn't always happen. But I love having conversations about it because talking about it is how we start to fix things. So we're going to have in a moment, Corey Hutchins is going to be giving an editorial here, but first a shout out to one of our gold sponsors, Vine and Wheel, for a refreshing new take on wine and cheese. Enjoy Vine and Wheel in downtown Colorado Springs, because wine and cheese are meant to be enjoyed together. And I always have to say amen after that, because I believe that's so true. So we have with us as our guest and co-host Corey Hutchins, Journalism Institute Manager at Colorado College and publisher of the Inside the News in Colorado weekly Substack. And Corey right now is going to talk about why Colorado is such an interesting place to cover the news. Corey Hutchins.
You said we're not going to lie, and that is a true statement. I really do believe that Colorado is one of, if not the best states in the country if you're reporting on what's happening in our local news feed, which is something that I do every week for the Substack newsletter. And I think a lot of it has to do with, think about the history of Colorado, the more modern history of Colorado, particularly when it came to politics. Always got the sense that Colorado had an outsized reputation in the United States when it came to politics. And I think that was because many years ago, if you recall, it was about a third, Republicans, Democrats, and independents. And so people might have felt like they got a fair shake when it came to policy, and people might have tried to test politics and policy here with the kind of thinking that if it could work in Colorado, then maybe it could work elsewhere. We looked at Colorado was kind of like America in miniature in a lot of ways, right? Our former governor, John Hickenlooper, once said that Colorado is like a test tube and people keep shaking it. I think that's true if you think about it in the media lens. If you look at what's going on in the media environment in Colorado, it suffers from a lot of the ills that are affecting media nationally are exacerbated here in Colorado. We have the hedge fund owners that have gutted newspapers just so they can ship off profits that are out-of-state shareholders. We've got the billionaire owners, right? And the great things that can happen to that, but also the problems of having just that one voice, okay? That person maybe not controlling the news, but owning it. But at the same time that we have these problems here that are reflected elsewhere, we also have solutions. So a lot of them we find experiments, pioneering stuff takes root in Colorado. A lot of the innovation that folks and researchers who try to identify and mitigate the problem facing the local news crisis come out of Colorado, and that's why it's so easy to put together a weekly newsletter every Friday. I am constantly writing about this new thing this idea that is taking root in the media scene, and sure enough, it's coming out of Colorado. Or this national organization that's going to try something to help fix this crisis facing local news. They try it here in Colorado, and I think it goes back to that idea that if we can do it here, and if it works here, then we can replicate it elsewhere. Sometimes they fail, and sometimes they do well, and there is success, and people can look to us for that success. And I think that's why Colorado kind of still has that kind of outsized reputation when it comes to local media. And I'm just proud to be able to live here and report that every week, because at the end of Thursday night when I'm putting together the newspaper, and even Friday morning, I have to cut. There's always too much to write about. And if you want to check it out, coloradomedia.substack.com is where you can find it tomorrow, and I'll publish that newsletter.
What about Colorado Springs, El Paso County specifically? What have you found here since you've reported from other places? What do you find out about what's interesting about our county?
So as the state's second largest city, I think kind of like how I said Colorado reflects the nation, I think this region here, the Pikes Peak region, kind of represents the state as a whole in a little bit, except for one thing. Very much unlike Denver, I think Colorado Springs really needs more online outlets. We really don't seem to me to have a robust ecosystem of like political blogs or online outlets. You go to Denver and it's just scattered with them. They're kind of everywhere. Here, you and I could probably list off two hands, or maybe one, the major dominant media organizations in town. And for a city our size, I think we deserve more.
Well, that's exactly why the Peak is here. I think we have a lot to do, and hearing that, because maybe I tapped into the spirit of Colorado. This is where we do things. I think everything good has to come out of Colorado Springs. We can test it here and send it around the country. So I'm glad that you picked up on that same vibe. That's very interesting to me. We're talking with Corey Hutchins from Colorado College and the Inside News in Colorado Substack. When we come back, more news. I had tapped my clock 10 seconds late, so I was a little off on that. That was great. Thanks. I'd just say I didn't know if you'd slow down. You were talking a little on the fast side. which is why maybe you dried up after 3 minutes instead of 4. So I didn't. The energy was good. The intensity was good. It was just a little. You were clipping a little fast.
Grew up in
So,
New York. I spent so many
yeah,
years in
no.
South Carolina. I thought I'd moderated it.
Yeah. Well, no, just here, not before. Just on that segment,
Okay.
you were just clipping a little fast. Yeah, I'm from Philly, so we're fast talkers. But anyway, I didn't know if I went like this, I didn't know if you know
Oh.
what I meant, because you might lower your intensity and
Yeah,
not your
yeah.
speed. So I just left you alone and to see if you would slow down a little bit, and you tempered a little bit, but it was. I would just say that it was really good. It was clear, but just a little sped up. So
Too sped up.
anyway, I know this is a new format for you, so
Oh, it is. I appreciate
and
the
so I want to help you with.
feedback for sure.
I always like helping people with their craft. So we're back on in a minute. Okay, so we're on page 4. If you want to
This is
review
authority?
the questions, what?
Authority.
Yeah, authority, problem, solution, promotion, 12-minute segment. So you have about 2 or 3 minutes for each one.
2 or 3 minutes for me to answer for those.
For each one, yeah. And I balance it out. It always works out. It's a good. I came up with this format for day one, and it's just worked. It's worked when I've had guest hosts. It just works. It creates all these little nooks and crannies. So there's always something. The editorial and the thing at the end that we're doing are really designed for outside reports as we get citizen journalists in.
I'm going to look at the time. I think that might help, actually.
Okay. What's up to you? Yep.
And so you said
we're back in
2
10.
to 3 minutes?
Yeah, about 2 to 3 minutes each, but just be comfortable with it. Don't get caught up in that. I'll pace us.
Yeah,
But-
okay.
Welcome back to the Peak News. I'm Chaim Goldman, the Watchman. You're listening to AM 1460 and FM 101.1 The Answer. It is Media and Education Day here at the Peak. Every Thursday is. And we have someone who actually represents both of those. Corey Hutchins. He's are you considered a professor?
Yeah.
On there? Okay, he's a professor at Colorado College of Journalism, and he also is actively working in the industry, which is great because we actually want teachers that are doing it, especially in an industry that changes so much. Those who can't do teach, right, but not very well necessarily, unless it's theoretical. But when you're in something that changes as much as this industry, I think you have to have a hand in it and be teaching at the same time. And I love to teach it. And so we're going to be learning more about news in Colorado in a moment, but I want to promote, because it's just a week from today, and I want to make sure that you're there as our Peak listening audience. It's called Taste of the Peak. It's an event we're doing at the amazing Pinery. It's a great place to have an event, and this is to the benefit of our nonprofit in order to help youth learn about journalistic ethics, about how to get good at their craft, how to write, how to use equipment, and then plug them into internships, which is really the way to break into media. That's how I got in. That's how pretty much. It's tough to get into media. You got to get down there. They got to see that you're working hard. And in fact, James, who was our #1 intern a year ago, he now works for Salem. He's sitting there in the booth right now. He got a job after 6 months because they saw his hustle. So this is happening Thursday, January 30th at the Pinery, 5 to 8 p.m. And it's a fundraiser. It's fun. We're going to have food, activities, great speakers, a lot of good schmoozing, networking going on. A lot of VIPs going to be in the room because I know a lot of people and invited them. They're coming down. And it's to benefit this great cause of getting media back and really into the hands of the people again. So go to thepeak.news/events, just $20 to attend and get your ticket because it's going to sell out, and tell others please. So it's going to be a fun evening. So we're here at the Peak where we say the quiet stuff out loud, and love to be sitting here with a fellow journalist as we swap stories. But Corey, give us your backstory. How did you come to be really the only person covering the local news scene in Colorado, as well as teaching journalism in this way at CC? I was really surprised when you told me that CC's only had a journalism program for about 7-8 years at this point.
We've had a minor for many years, but we've only had the Journalism Institute, you're right, for about 5 or 6 years. I'm going to ask you a question. How did I become the only person consistently covering the local news scene in Colorado? It's a two-part answer. One, it was easy, and two, it was hard. It was easy because nobody else was doing it. So the reason why I think it's popular and successful, to the extent that, okay, I'll be honest with you, I have 4,600 subscribers. So you can tell me if you think that's a lot.
Yeah.
There's 5 million people in the state. Uh,
Yeah,
it's a niche
but
audience.
but it's a niche audience, but it's a passionate niche audience.
Sure,
You
and
know,
so
yeah.
because nobody else is doing it, it's easy for me to kind of do, and I have a background in it. I was a correspondent for Columbia Journalism Review for about a decade, where I covered what was happening at the local media scene all across the country, starting with 4 states in
From
the Southeast.
Columbia University.
Columbia University
Okay.
in New York City, yeah. CJR.org. That's the magazine that's covered the media industry in the United States since the 1960s. So my background in doing that really helped in just focusing it to Colorado, because my remit used to be a lot broader. Um, and so I have a background in local news. I started my career as a local news reporter at a weekly newspaper in South Carolina. I did write for larger publications. I wrote for The Nation magazine. I wrote for the Daily Caller site. I wrote for the Center for Public Integrity and did long investigation, year-long investigations. I reported on politics, government. I reported on corruption. And I was a reporter for the Colorado Independent, which was a statewide nonprofit newsroom. And I also did my weekly newsletter.
Not the Colorado Springs Independent.
No, and thanks for bringing that up. Similar name. Have written for the Colorado Springs Independent, I'll say. But I found that even while I was covering politics, my weekly column about what was going on behind the scenes in the media seemed to be what would always get more feedback. And for a while, I started to feel like this is the most important thing I'm doing. And so I really started dialing back my political reporting around 2018 and just focusing on what's going on in the media, local media scene in Colorado, because nobody else was doing it, and I was filling a niche and provide people something that they can't get anywhere else every week.
And so, how'd you get the gig at Colorado College?
So Colorado College is on something called a block plan, totally unique schedule in which the students take one class at a time for 3.5 weeks, 3 hours a day. So because it's a block plan, it could bring journalists in to teach journalism classes who are otherwise just professional journalists out somewhere. They didn't have somebody here based in the Springs that was running the program. Somebody who was championing the Journalism Institute at the time, Stephen Hayward, asked me if I wanted to help him build a program and kind of really bolster this minor that we have. We don't have a major in journalism at Colorado College. We have a minor. And so he said, let's see what the enthusiasm is like among the students back, I think, around 2018. And we've been building the minor ever since. And I started teaching. So I was a block visitor. I would just teach a block here and there while having a full-time job. And I started to teach more blocks, and then I really love it. And I decided that I'm gonna do this. And as you said before, it allows me to be a full-time journalism instructor and be able to still do the journalism I do out in the field every week.
So you talked earlier about, and we know this, it's the term that's being used a lot is news deserts. As the money's drying up, there's not the money to provide the news, because it used to be that there were only so many places you could get it. The advertising would go there. Now the money is spread all over the place, so places are drying up. So what is the crisis that's facing local news in Colorado and the rest of the country that you see? What are we really up against in order, trying to inform people and get real news to them?
It's just what you said. It's the disappearance of local news in communities. It's happening across the country, and it's happening here in Colorado. The statistic that I saw recently from a major research report is that newspapers in the past year or so closed at about a rate of 2.5 every week. In Colorado, we have lost 52 newspapers in the past 20 years or so.
Wow.
We lost 5 newspapers in Colorado in the past few months alone. 5 newspapers disappeared out on our rural eastern plains. One of them came back. Another one is just kind of holding on. And so the question is, what happens when a local newsroom goes dark? Where are the people in those communities getting their local news and information? That's what we're trying to figure out at the CC Journalism Institute with our News Desert project and our Colorado Mapping project. And we're having students help try and fill those gaps. And we're trying to figure out to what extent local colleges and universities can play a role in local communities when they lose their own paper or their outlet.
Yeah. So what are your ideas, about fixing it? Obviously, we're looking at a citizen journalism model, saying, look, we can't afford to start newsrooms; those are going down. But what if we could empower the citizens and give them a platform? That's our approach. What are some other things you're seeing in the industry?
I'll give you an example. In one of the first news deserts we identified in Colorado, it's a county called Cheyenne County, about 2 hours east of here. 1,700 people live in Cheyenne County. They lost their local newspaper, The Ledger, in 2022. Where are the people getting their local news and information in Cheyenne right now? Where do you think? If you had to guess.
Just talking to each other over the fence post.
Yeah, kind of, but digitally in a Facebook
Okay.
group that was created by somebody who has an affiliation with county government and somebody from like I think a local historical society who just started this group to share memories and show pictures. And all of a sudden now it has. I told you the population of Cheyenne's 1,700. This Facebook group has 1,600 people in it, and if you look at the page, it's never going to really take the place of a local newspaper.
So I was right. It's digitally over the fence post.
It's become it's become the digital town square in a county that lost its newspaper. And so what we're doing at CC, I've got 5 students that are filing open records requests with local governments in Cheyenne County. They're interviewing people in Cheyenne County, and more importantly, they're asking the community, and they're publishing their work directly onto the Facebook page with the permission of the moderator. And they're asking the community, this is the important part, what do you care about? What's important to you? And if you don't have the time to go to the meeting, we're going to access the recording of that meeting. We're going to listen to it, and we're going to tell you what's important from that meeting. And we're looking at AI tools to figure out if we can make that more efficient for us to do. And so it's an experiment that we're really just starting at the beginning of this year to find out to what extent a local college 2 hours away with the students can help provide people the information they need to be free and self-governing in a county when it lost its local newspaper.
I want to get to your Substack, to your newsletter, but just real quick, is there any other just sort of bullet points of ways people are approaching news differently in order to solve this problem?
A big trend I've seen in Colorado in recent years is a business model conversion. Newspapers are converting to nonprofits. And we're seeing some success when that happens, and sometimes we've seen it where it hasn't worked out. Here in Colorado Springs, you know what happened when the Colorado Independent converted to a nonprofit. All of a sudden, they found when they were doing the books after that conversion some massive monetary shortfall, or more double that. That was. I forget what the number was, but it was big. It was enough to basically
and now it's owned by J.W. Roth.
And what did that? It went out of business. 2 local businessmen came in and took it over. So there's an instance where converting to a nonprofit maybe didn't work out. But the Colorado Sun, for instance, has gone through like 3 conversions. Started as an LLC, then became a public benefit corporation, and just recently converted into a nonprofit.
Okay, we have about a minute left. I want you to tell people about the Inside the News Colorado Substack. You can get it, by the way, at coloradomedia.substack.com, coloradomedia.substack.com. Pitch us your newsletter.
Sure. Every Friday, I report on, comment on, and analyze what's going on in Colorado's local media scene. I'm always trying to connect something that's happening nationally to something that's happening here in our state or here in the Pikes Peak region. You can find original reporting in it that you're just not going to get anywhere else if you care about what's going on behind the scenes in local media. I also do roundups. At the end of every post, there is a and this is going to hit your inbox, by the way. It's called an inbox newsletter. I teach a class at Colorado College called Inbox Journalism, just about the rise of these newsletters. So if you're interested in what's going on behind the scenes, or if you have a tip or something's going on in your community that, I do media criticism too, so if you don't like something that the local media is doing here in Colorado, let me know about it. You can email me at coryhutchins@gmail.com or check out that newsletter at coloradomedia.substack.com.
Okay, excellent.
That sounded like an ad.
No, it is. Well, I told you to pitch it. We have to advertise stuff. We can't just serve the public like we're, complete saints. We got bills to pay around here, and that's why we're going to break with our. That's a good segue over to our sponsors. When we come back with Cory Hutchins of the Colorado Media Inside Colorado News Substack and Colorado College, we're going to be talking about how to be an active consumer of news. You know I don't like passive listeners here, so we're going to get you active on the peak when we get right back. Cool. Well, if you want to do tie something in and do a regular segment here. Because what I was telling you at the break, the segment we're about to do and the segment we did before that were 5 minutes, those were actually designed for outside reports to have people give. And sometimes we do. Sometimes we have call-ins. We've had some people do reports, but it hasn't come together the way we wanted it to. Mm-hmm. But that's why we have those, so that we could really, out of necessity, we have the guests fill that spot a lot of the time, but that wasn't the original design. The design was having those so we could have 1 or 2 outside reports of the community filing, because 4.5, 5 minutes is a great
You said that's been difficult or what?
just in how we've tried to build it, getting in citizen journalists. Now we're turning toward interns and moving toward other stuff, but getting people to actually. Honestly, we haven't done. I'm going to start it in a couple of weeks. My background, my first job I went to Boston University for broadcasting and film. So my first full-time job out of that was local access programming in Massachusetts, where we would train local people to run the cameras, to do that stuff, and then we would cover stuff. We would do in-house talk shows. We'd go out and do government meetings or parades. So I want to get back to training people, like a 4-week training course, some journalistic ethics, some this thing we're going to do in the schools, but in a much more limited thing for adults, and then deputize them to go out and report on stuff. Hey, you want to go to the school board meetings, or you want to cover whatever, and then have sort of a I say sort of like a AAA, like a feeder
Farm team,
tube,
yeah.
where hey, you're authorized to be you can report, you can put stuff on our YouTube page, and then work people up to where they can come on and do a report here, and sort of have a farm league way of giving reporters their, yes.
5 minutes.
And what's it on?
Which is on Elon Musk.
Okay. You have, I don't know if you know Jim Miller, who ran for mayor.
Just a guy.
Just a guy, yeah. So he does a rant.
Yeah, I saw that on the show.
Okay, so anyway, that's
Well, I
what-
think that's important because, as you know, you don't need
We're
a
back about
journalism
30
degree to be a journalist.
Right.
I mean, half, maybe not half. I mean, a large portion of the people that I've worked with in newsrooms, they were my bosses. They get degrees
but
in
please plug in your
literature
students
or
to here. I mean,
international political economy.
we want to give
business.
people a platform, and I want to start pulling away. I really need to be out there on the street with advertisers and doing PR and
You
turning
got to
this.
do everything.
I know, but I'm doing this every day is a lot,
Right.
so I'm actually trying to do less of me and have other people have the opportunity to be on the mic, so.
How many minutes are we on this next segment?
Welcome back to the Peak News. I'm Chaim Goldman, the Watchman. You're listening to AM 1460 and FM 101.1, The Answer, and we're finishing up the program with Corey Hutchins. He is a local journalism professor at Colorado College, as well as puts out Inside the News in Colorado newsletter every week. And so in this final segment, wanted to talk about being an active consumer of the news. If you're a listener of the Peak, I always say I don't want passive listeners. I want you to be inspired by our guests. I want you to do something. If it's the media, come join us here at the Peak. Go to thepeak.news. Read about our citizen journalist or internship project if you're a younger person, and come join us here. We really are turning the mic over to other people, either as techs or as reporters. But we need to demand more of the media. People say they don't want to be told what to think, but honestly, what I've found is y'all do. You do. You want the media to find out what the truth is and then tell you what it is. If you didn't, you would dig in more. And so we want you to be good consumers, just like anything else that you buy or you spend time with. You check it out. So Corey, what's your advice for people to break from being a passive, listener and consumer of the news to actually being active? What should we do?
You got to actively break the algorithm. If you're just sitting back and...
So you're talking about getting the news online, literally the algorithm.
If you're getting... I mean, frankly, most people are getting their news from their phone screens. You know that. And if you're not actively out there searching for and looking for and identifying and analyzing and assessing what you believe to be credible news and information, you're going to get fed a lot of stuff by companies that have targeted you or news feeds that, for one reason or another, are pushing stuff in your direction.
And
that's just going to happen.
And you create your own bubble.
You do. Or the bubble gets created for you. And I shouldn't use passive voice. The bubble doesn't get created for you. Somebody creates the bubble for you, right? And so you really should be going out there and searching online for news and information, but you also just have to double check that it's credible. Some really simple tips you can do. Look at the site's about section. Does it tell you who wrote it? Look for what we call in journalism a byline.
Bylines,
If there's no author on it, or if it just says the name of the publication is the author, that's kind of a red flag. If you can't find out who is funding the source that you're reading, that's kind of a red flag. Why wouldn't they want to tell you? And then you can assess, I think you really need to assess every piece of content now on its own terms. If you're watching CNN, just because someone's talking on it doesn't mean what they're saying is true, because they have pundits up there, they have politicians, they pay now to be pundits and stuff. You have to really make sure assess every piece of content as its own little atom, right? And what I do is I kind of think about some of the elements of journalism. To what extent does this, what I'm reading, have an obligation to the truth? To what extent can I figure out that this piece of content, this writer who's reporting it, or whether I'm listening or watching it, has a loyalty to the public and not someone else, not a brand, not a partisan figure, right? Not an advertiser. To what extent is the person or the organization independent from what it's covering? Okay, that's important. So those are kind of just three simple elements of journalism that you can assess, try and get a sense for yourself. Is this obligation to the truth? Is this loyalty to the public? Is it independent from what it's covering? If it meets that test, it might be credible, but you should always double check.
What's your concern regarding AI? Can it be a helpful tool? Can journalists use it, or is it going to become this just massive fake, bubble for all of us?
It's certainly going to be that. There's a lot of problems with artificial intelligence, and I'm really, really terrified by some of it. But I'm also not completely knee-jerk allergic to this technology. We are finding ways, journalists, finding ways to use this credibly and ethically in a way that provides people with the information they need to be free and self-governing, which is the purpose of journalism.
What do you tell your students regarding it?
I tell them that we will talk about the extent to which they can use AI for class, and frankly, I've gotten to the point where I think it's okay to use artificial intelligence, and I've told my students this, if they're using it as an editing tool. But if they're using it to write for them, no.
We're going to have to be pretty wise as instructors to figure that out. We've been listening to Corey Hutchins. His Substack is coloradomedia.substack.com. Corey, thanks so much. I think this is just the beginning of our working together.
Well, thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it.
And now we have Jim Miller, Just a Guy, and the Peak Rants. And Jim today is talking about Elon Musk.
Trucks everywhere. What's going on? He's talking about a lot of stuff, getting to Mars, lots of other things, how grateful he is, how good things can be, should be, ought to be. And he's also getting ready to do the whole thing with the efficiency of the government, the system, which I think is a good thing. But the way it looks a little odd, looks a little suspect there. I'm not saying what it is or isn't. But what I will say is that was not the best look, buddy. I'm hoping it's nothing, but if it was something, then we gotta call him on it being something, and that kind of stuff's not acceptable. But if it's nothing and it's just some kind of miscommunication or misinterpreted bit, we need to be those kind of people too. Alright? It's alright if it isn't nothing, but it's also not alright if it is something. Remember, we want a better be better. I'm Jim Miller, I'm just a guy, this is the Peak Rants on AM 1460 and FM 101.1 The Answer. We'll be right back.
That was okay. Some are better than others. We just let them go.
Is that it?
That's
That's
what?
the show?
What?
That's the show?
I have a 2-minute close after the commercial break. You can hang if you want, or if you need to go.
Yeah, no.
We're done with We're done. Yeah, I met Jim during the mayoral debate, because I do, the church voter guides is my project, so, and so I was going to the mayoral debates, and I just saw him on stage, and I said, this guy's golden for radio. I got
He's got
this
the
guy
voice,
on.
right?
It is. He's
What
got the
accent
New
is
York
that?
thing,
Is
and
that
he's
a New York
Marine,
accent?
and
Okay.
well, I don't know where he gets it, because he's from California, but he has this like New York thing,
My heart.
and
My heart.
he's conservative. He's not Christian. He's conservative, and he's just, you know, he's got this no filter thing. Which I said his program. If you remember Andy Rooney from 60 Minutes, do you know what I'm talking about? Do you know that? How old are you?
Andy Rooney.
Do you remember that?
What was his segment called?
Andy Rooney. Well, it was just, I think it was a few
At the
minutes with Andy Rooney or
He
something.
lived near me, and my dad would see him at the Radio Shack.
Okay, so it was, you know, it was the end of a news show, and it was the grumpy, sarcastic guy,
Yes.
right? So I said,
My dad used to tell me, find
okay.
Andy Rooney if you want to get into journalism.
I mean, there was, and, you know, and some of his stuff was great, and some of it was, you know, okay, but it was just. So I said, you know what, I'm trying to do. You can see we're doing a little bit of rock and roll news. Like I wanted it to have an edge to it, so I said, let's bring him on. And originally, he was just going to introduce other people's rants, and then I was just going to have people call in and like rant. And then he just said he had a lot in him. So we've been going for a year. He comes in, he does like a whole week at once. And he just goes off on topics. And he's become sort of the everyman that we wanted. You know, that's what he ran on.
Just a guy.
I said, this is gold. This is great shtick. And it's worked. And he's become a little bit of a mini celebrity in the region. And
He's going to run again.
well, he actually...
He's going to thank you.
No, well, he actually was rushing and got in the paperwork for city council. We don't know if he got enough signatures, so he might be. It hasn't become public yet. But on Tuesday, he decided over the weekend, and then he couldn't get the paperwork because of Martin Luther King Day. So he had one day, had to pick up the paperwork and get the 50 signatures. So he's going to see if he's running. I told him when the Yemi thing broke, I said, get ready to run again. There might be a special election coming up on, you know, if Yemi gets busted. So, you know, but it's just been, you know, it's interesting. We're like a ragtag group of people trying to get people voices back. That's been my thing of like, it's like, hey everybody, you want your voice back? Like come down and you got to exercise your First Amendment right. You actually have to do it. Yeah. Okay, I'll be back in 2 minutes. Well, thank you for joining us for another week of The Peak. This is our first full week of our second year on the air, and we're just getting started. We say the quiet stuff out loud. We want to say it even louder, and you can help us do that in a lot of different ways. First of all, just, you know, be a fan, be a regular listener. If you can't catch us live, go on our website, thepeak.news, and listen to our podcast. We have like 180 podcasts that we've done. Great guests, people you know, people you've never heard of, but are making an impact in the community. But unlike other news organizations, you can actually be a reporter or a tech or an intern. You can be a sponsor here. You can do that in every news organization pretty much. But you can be a sponsor here as a local business and supporting this. And also, please, and tell other people about this, come to our event, Taste of the Peak. It's happening a week from today, Thursday, January 30th, down at the lovely Pinery. And this is a fundraising event, but we're calling it a fun fundraising event because we're going to have food tasting from local restaurants. We're going to have lots of activities, lots of good networking, and then great speakers. Jason Jurgensen, a board member of D11, Heidi Ganal from Rocky Mountain Boys, Chris Gould, who's the GM here at Salem, Colorado Springs, and also a senior VP in Salem. Jeff Crank's coming in by video, our new congressman, and me, and other surprises. And it's all to the benefit of helping local youth break into media and teaching them how to be real journalists, not activists. And I hope we all agree, no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on, we want solid media here, not indoctrination. Well, Fridays I'm off, but Dirk Hobbs is here with the Southern Colorado Business Forum and Digest, so tune in for that. Monday, Business and Culture Monday, we have Tracy Marquez, CEO of the Pikes Peak Workforce Center, and Becca Tan, Pikes Peak Workforce Center Communications Director, talking about business, of course. Stick around now for the Larry Elder Show. Coming up next on The Answer, The Peak, we say the quiet stuff out loud, and we want you to also use your voice for such a time as this, my fellow citizens. Thanks for tuning into The Peak for such a time as this. Shalom.
Yes, yes. And he's they call him the black face of white supremacy. They actually accuse him of being a white supremacist because he's a conservative. So that's interesting. But yeah, he was a longtime host on Salem, and then when he ran for governor, he needed to not have the show. And they brought in a younger guy, black conservative guy, Brendan Tatum. He was on for a year or so, and then Larry decided to come back, and so that's his name.
George have to do radio show
I don't know about George. I know, I don't know what he did. I know Jeff Crank, who worked for Americans for Prosperity. Yeah. He actually does a podcast out of here, recorded out of here. He was on KVOR. Until it was really weird. The story is that Matt, our main producer here, was actually his producer there. COVID came. He was broadcasting from home, and then the entire national network said everybody had to get the jab. And so after 14 years on the radio, he couldn't not have the job while he was broadcasting from home with calling guests. And yeah, he said, I'm out of here. He quit. And so did Matt, his producer, and Matt ended up over here. He's really awesome. But yeah, they were going to force him to do that. So he wasn't willing. So he dropped out. But they let him do his podcast through the campaign, and they thought they were going to let him continue to do it as a congressman. But then they decided no, they couldn't. It was too much of a conflict of interest. So
it wasn't a conflict during the campaign. But
it wasn't during the campaign. Well, during the, yeah, I don't know how the decision making was done, but he wasn't obviously allowed to talk about his candidacy. He was just continuing to do his job, and that's really a gray area. It's like if you're not talking about your candidacy, but you are getting media all the time, right? But but I mean that's part of the game. Donald Trump obviously being, it's like they had that. So I don't know. I don't have to make that decision. I just need to.
Oh, so you're not running?
Yeah, I won't. I'm more. This is what I like to do. Even church voter guides, people think it's political, but it's journalistic. We send a survey. We print exactly what they send us, and it's like you read between the lines. We're not endorsing anybody. That's why it's 501c3 compliant. And we even publish their typos. I mean, we send stuff back and go, you might want to run a spell check, but we don't edit it at all up to 120 words. So it's like read what they say, read what they're not saying. Crafting the questions is the key. How do you do stuff that's not leading, and yet it pigeonholes them enough that you can say, well, they sort of answered the question, they sidestepped this. It's the heart of being an active consumer. We've had people say it's too cerebral, it's too much information. People just want to know what to be told who to vote for.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to be part of the dumbing down of America. I'm going to raise the bar and see if people step up. But that's now 4 years with every political candidate, every person in office in the county has been through my guide because we've done 4 years, and then. Which is great for a radio show because I can call up, I know everybody. And I'm like the guy, I didn't realize this for you, I'm like the guy who contributes to every candidate, but not in a sleazy way. Like I give them a favor, I put them in my guide, it doesn't cost anything. When do you get to people without any filter, without paying for it, right? So it's a really cool format, and it's something we're trying to spread around because you don't need to know politics. If you can send out a survey and just cut and paste it and distribute it, and it's been really powerful, but it's built relationships.
You know, I'm screwed up. I'm the idea that people just fundamentally just tell me to go for themselves because I really want to be a project that we're not able to endorse in a long history. Endorsements are usually just the opposite of the but I had a lot of some friends who would tell me to miss that because they would just consult the indie for their dollar. They'd be like, oh, they've done all the work. I kind of agree with the indie. I don't want the Gazette's editorial page, so I'm just going to go with what the indie said. And I thought, maybe editorial pages and those endorsements are more powerful than I thought. Well, there was a council race in my district where I really shook my head. And the Gazette endorsed somebody, and the indie endorsed somebody else. And the person who I voted for won, and it was neither of the two. And I wondered, like, what does that tell you? That I'm like a man without a paper? And the papers weren't reflecting my views, either. But also, it shows that, like, they don't have to pull these stuff.
Can you stop with this?
I don't know. I unplugged the camera. I turned off. I shut down the feed.
Okay.
And then before you guys
Yeah, sure.
Describing the Nephilim. The Nephilim is, and you can say that like you're reading scripture, and then you plug yourself into, plug a like, okay, bing, 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 pay attention, get this, and then finish the sentence. They were 9 feet tall. Do you know how tall 9 feet is? 9 feet is huge. That's like taller than my car. I don't know, whatever it is, whatever. You think of something out to say, and then finish the rest of the scripture.
Okay.
So that when you're reading the scripture, it's tying in moment by moment to what you're talking about. Because if you're just like, people lose it when like you lose focus. I mean, unless